windswept. "That tickles," said Rogue, giggling, as I moved her ears. "I'm not going to get to see them at all tonight, though," I said, as I helped her tuck them beneath her hair and secure them with small bits of tape. An uncomfortable practice, but needed, since her ears moved of their own accord. Her teeth were hidden away, and had I not known the truth, I would have sworn she was human. "I don't get why we're doing this," I said. "Because Beth invited me on a double date with her boyfriend," she said. Rogue's day job was working at an accounting office. She was very good with numbers and technology, as evidenced by the array she was putting together in the attic to try and call home. "She's the secretary for your boss, right?" I asked. She nodded. "Come on, John, we've got to get moving. It's almost time," she said. I glanced at my phone. "The reservation's in an hour," I said, as she pushed me towards my closet. "We still have to dress you up," she said. I groaned, as she led me over to the closet and quickly picked up my clothes. "Is the fact that women are obsessed with clothes a universal constant?" I asked, as she dug through my mess of a closet. "Funny, I was going to ask if all men were just pig-headed," she said. Stepping out, she handed me a black button-up shirt and dark jeans. "You want me to look dark and mysterious?" I asked. She shrugged. "I like the colour. Black wasn't something really worn on my planet. I've always liked it, though." I nodded and accepted the clothes. She didn't mention her planet that much, and considering everything else, I didn't press for details on it. I had the distinct impression that when it did come up, it was not going to be a happy recounting. Slipping into the ensemble, I gave her a wink. She reached up and messed with my hair. I was apparently going for the windswept look. "Ready?" I asked, as I resisted the urge to straighten the hair back out. Rogue nodded. "Yep." Double date. I was about ready to put the steakhouse knife through my own hand. Rogue appeared to be equally ready to resort to drastic measures to escape the date. Her ears were taped down, but I could still judge her mood from the small movements of her hair around them when we were out. Her ears were no doubt pressed against her head lying flat. Not a good sign. "So then, I had to go through and redo all the accountant's work too, since he messed up the accounting software," said Kent, the boyfriend of Beth. A man who had not since we sat down at the table shut up for more than 2 seconds, and only then it was to shove as much of the appetizers into his mouth as possible. The man was apparently a manager at some office doing who knows what for some company. I felt bad for any subordinates he had, because from what I had heard during his own self-professing speeches, he was a micromanaging idiot. Thankfully, the service at the steakhouse was quick, and we were interrupted by the arrival of our food before he could go into telling me how the accounting software they used was shit. The waitress, a young lady who couldn't be more than 19 years old and appeared to be only a week into the job, hesitantly checked her notepad at the table as she put the food down in front of us. "Come on, I'm starving over here," said Kent, chuckling slightly as if making a joke. I blinked at the man, unsure how I was supposed to respond. Group steak dinner?" asked the waitress, glancing back at her notes, the large platter she was holding. "That's mine," said Rogue. The waitress looked at her and then at the food for a moment before setting it down. I, for a moment, couldn't understand why she was confused, but then it dawned on me that a human woman who looked like Rogue would not be eating 3 large, very rare steaks all by themselves. Her metabolism was highly inefficient, so she ate a lot, and her body was not very good at making or burning fat in any case. The reason I had to step up my gym schedule when we had first started dating. Going out with her, I had at first tried to match her intake. Alright." I could hear Rogue beginning to purr next to me. The waitress quickly divvied up the rest of the food. Kent gave my dish an odd look but didn't say anything. I wasn't sure what he had against chicken Caesar salad, but I rarely got my veggies these days, so I was craving salad like I had once wanted a bacon-infused cheeseburger. "So, what's it you do for a living?" asked Kent, as he began to cut up his overcooked steak. I'm a biochemist, so I work in a lab most days, retesting experiments from other labs to verify them and lend authenticity to published papers," I said. "What, like curing cancer and stuff?" asked Kent, as he waved his knife at me in an exaggerated movement, nearly hitting my shirt with the juices that flew off of it. "When are you going to fix that in people and not in mice or something?" he asked again, laughing. "I'm sure that'll be sometime soon," I said, not really wanting to go into depth about how I wasn't working with cancer. I spent most of my time doing drug trials. Kent continued to go on about his own work after that, quickly drowning out any other conversations that came up. Rogue ploughed through her meal in record time, and then apparently still packaged started picking the chicken out of what remained of my salad. "We need an escape plan," I breathed as she leaned in next to me. Rogue glanced at me, and then back at Beth and Kent. She appeared to be hanging on his words, as boring and repetitive as they were. "Yep. Ideas?" asked Rogue. The waitress who had been serving us provided the opportunity, when she tripped and sent a tray of dishes onto the table and directly into my lap, spilling the bones of several T-bone steaks and other meals into my lap. Rogue, who had been leaning against me, was suddenly on the opposite end of the table, sitting next to Beth. I blinked and looked down. "I'm so sorry," said the girl, as she stepped forward and quickly started to put the dishes back onto her tray. "What the hell are you doing?" said Kent. He stood up, displaying the small stain on his shirt. I, along with the other patrons of the place, gave him a withering look. If there was anyone who's a right to complain, it would be me, with the place still in my lap. "I'm sorry," repeated the waitress. "This shirt is ruined," he said. "Kent, calm down, it was an accident," said Beth. "Whatever, I'm not paying for this," he said, and grabbing Beth's hand he dragged her out of the restaurant. The place was now almost deadly silent, and the waitress was beat red in the face, and she was still slowly picking the plates out of my lap. "Well, that was one way to do it," I said. Rogue nodded. "Yep." "I'll make sure you don't have to pay," said the waitress. I waved my hand and pulled out my wallet. "You made a mistake, it's fine," I said, as I held my credit card out to her. "Get me a towel and ring this up," I said. The young waitress nodded and, picking up the final dish, ran off. Another waiter quickly came over and handed me a towel. The atmosphere of the place slowly returned to normal. The manager came out and apologized, offering to comp the meal. I insisted on paying on the condition next time we come around that make the steaks a little more rare for my girlfriend, who preferred them more bloody. Getting into the car to drive home, Rogue took the wheel, and as we pulled out of the parking lot she reached up and quickly removed the tape holding her ears back. They began to violently twitch. "What's up?" I asked. "You're different," she said. "Thank you. My mother always told me I was a special flower." She huffed. "You didn't get mad. A man of my world would have acted like Kent did. Worse, in fact, if a social snafu like that happened," she said. "Alright. Would you want me to act like that?" I asked. She shook her head. "No. The girl made a mistake. I could smell her stress." "I'm dating an alien, so I'm not really one for conforming to social norms. Besides, life is too short to freak out over things like that. It also ended what was a disaster of a double date," I said. Rogue nodded. "Yeah, sorry about that. I guess Beth saw her boyfriend through lavender-tinted glasses." "Rose-tinted," I said, correcting her. "And that's most relationships. You don't think I'm the best in the world?" I asked, joking. She smiled. "Maybe. You smell too much like dinner right now, though. I might just take a bite out of you," she said, and clicked her teeth forward, letting her jaw relax. I mentally checked any romance involving food off of the list. Those teeth and the look in her eyes were a little too predatory. Demands. I made a mistake. A horrible, awful, life-changing mistake. We had been in bed, both of us on our phones, just relaxing. Wanting my body warmth, Rogue had leaned in next to me, her head on my shoulder. My hand had absently gone up, and I started running my hand through her hair, which she kept long enough to mask her ears. Feeling her skull, you could feel that it was a little elongated, like the wrapped skulls of an ancient Egyptian. It wasn't dramatic, just a little tapering. At the very back of her skull, where that dull point formed, was apparently a cluster of nerves. She sighed and collapsed into my lap as my hand brushed past it. She then insisted I focus on that spot like a cat would when you scratched at his ears or stomach. Since then, at every opportunity, she would put her head in my lap and insist I scratch at the spot. It's a little scary when your alien girlfriend begins to insist on being petted and baring her teeth when refused. Suits. Who do you think they are? Asked Rogue. I looked through the peephole to our door again at the two men standing outside the door. FBI, CIA, something like that maybe? She nodded. All right, what should we do? She asked. Go and grab some clothes and the spare money. If we need to run, we're going to have to go out the back. Unless they have us surrounded. In that case, I have no idea. The guy pounded on the door again. 1 second, I said in a voice a little over a whisper, wanting to seem like I was further from the door. Rogue dashed out of the room, and I heard several things fall to the floor as she scrambled to collect everything. In under a minute, she was back, a bag slung over her shoulder. I swallowed and opened the door. The two men looked at me for a moment. Are you Samuel Shepard? Asked the first man. I blinked. No? He glanced back down at his clipboard and then at me. Is this not 25892 Lincoln Drive? He asked. No, you went one house too far. The two men nodded. Alright, thanks. They turned to leave. Who are you again? I asked. We're with the IRS, said one of the men. Ah, alright. Have a good day, I said, as I closed the door and breathed a sigh of relief. Rogue and I looked at one another and began to laugh. Replaced. It had been a long day, and it was dark outside by the time I left work. There had been a chemical spill, and misfiled paperwork to deal with, meaning I had hardly gotten any work done, despite the long hours I put in. And to top it off, Rogue had apparently gotten the afternoon off, meaning I should have been able to spend the time with her. Stepping into the house and shrugging off my jacket, I noticed that it was very warm, and that most of the lights were off. I glanced at my phone. It was a little early to be going to bed, but still, Rogue might have. Quietly making my way through the house, I paused. The small living room appeared to have exploded in a mass of sheets and blankets. Walking through it, I spotted Rogue curled up in what could only be described as a nest, the pillow I usually slept with clutched in her hands. The image was cute enough that it took me a moment to realize she was wearing something that we had picked out together online. Lots of her non-reflective skin was showing. Quietly, I moved forwards. Her ears twitched and her mouth opened slightly, but otherwise she didn't react. As predatory as she could be, she still slept like a rock. Laying down next to her, I relaxed on the floor. It wasn't the most comfortable thing in the world, but with the dim lights and her next to me, it was perfect. Rogue continued to clutch at the pillow. And beginning to feel a little jealous, I put my arms around her. It took several minutes, but feeling my body heat, the grip on the pillow loosened, and in her sleep, she slowly turned around and pressed herself against me. I had not thought this through. I really needed to use the bathroom. Netflix 2. Rogue had figured out the trick with the thermostat, and what I had been doing to it when we were watching our movies late at night. She smiled though, and adjusted the temperature to be a little colder, and then dove under the blanket with me leaving only her head exposed. Humans make really weird aliens. I looked up at the screen, which was showing the little green creature that had appeared out of the swamp to train the young man who had crashed his ship in the muck. What's wrong with him? I asked. Nothing, I guess. A little small, though. Well, you can't blame us. We've not met any real aliens unless we want to count you and the little grey men. Rogue laughed. Those things are even more ridiculous. What kind of species would evolve to be that spindly? She asked. I nodded. Yeah, well, that was the beginning of the alien craze. Since then, we've seen UFOs all over the place and lizard people are taking over the government. Seriously, how is he just moving stuff with his mind? What? There's no mystical space force out there? I asked. No, that's ridiculous. Darn. Laser swords? Not that I know of. planet-destroying superweapons? I asked. Rogue hesitated. I suddenly realized I might have touched on a rather difficult subject. Reaching up, I began to rub at her head again. She leaned in to the tuff, and for another portion of the movie, we were both silent. I had gone a little too far, and I didn't want to press the issue. No superweapons like that, but there are planet destroyers. Ships that fire weapons from orbit, glassing entire cities. People died in an instant from the blast. She pulled the blanket up and disappeared underneath it. You don't have to talk about it, I said, now ignoring the movie and still beating myself over the head for what I had said. Okay,